welcome to another episode of the Otaku Remix Podcast. It's your boy Brando Castro. Joining me, as always, the wonderful Christopher House.
I'm back. I've returned.
From the wintry highlands of Connecticut.
Yeah, pretty much.
For a special podcast where we get to sit down, do what we always do, discuss the animes and the cartoons, and have a nice discussion about one of Watanabe's newest anime, the Netflix hit Carole and Tuesday.
This is his current newest. Like, there's nothing.
He has not created anything to sequel this yet. Yeah, no.
Okay.
But his newest and shiniest anime, the anime starring the two young women coming up on the Mars game of music. We just wanted to have a little playful conversation since you just went on a 3-day binge or 2-day binge and just destroyed it.
Yeah, no, I was like, okay, we gotta get back to this podcast. Let's do Carole and Tuesday, and we're like, yeah, and that was like 2 months ago.
Yeah, and then you finally came around.
I finally was like, man,
I haven't watched it.
You know what it is? I was in the middle of watching. Have you seen the show The Good Place?
The Good Place. I've heard of The Good Place.
Not anime. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
And I was on like episode 8 while I was working on stuff. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I said I would watch Carole and Tuesday. Instead, I'm watching this mediocre comedy.
I'm not saying you can't watch comedy in between your anime duties.
But if I make a promise, I should keep it.
Oh yeah? All right. Well, a man of integrity.
No.
Well, half integrity.
Half integrity.
I'm glad that you came around on your promise.
Absolutely. So while I was finishing up this anime as I was driving to Pennsylvania, I was like, yeah, we should definitely do this. So that's what we're sitting down and we're doing today.
Yeah, so we're gonna have like a loose discussion, just kind of giving our thoughts and opinions on how the overall story went, how the overall anime experience was for us. Obviously, huge spoiler alert for everything moving forward. We're gonna assume that you have also enjoyed Watanabe's newest hit alongside us, and we're just kind of going to go into it. But for those of you who just want to listen to it anyway, a quick preface. Carole and Tuesday follows the story of two young girls living on Mars named Carole and Tuesday. Carole being a young orphan who's kind of scraping her way by. Tuesday being the daughter of a very powerful political figure on Mars who is kind of run away from home, and both kind of have musical aspirations. They find each other, form a musical duo, and it's their journey to the top, essentially, along with a lot of other complications, extraneous and otherwise. So yeah, what were your initial impressions, Chris? Let's just start there, of maybe even hearing about the anime and just starting it.
When did we hear about this? Because this came out obviously last year.
Yeah, 2019.
It's actually published in Japan like the middle of the season, like the summer.
Yeah, I think that, it started its initial broadcast in 2018, I want to say, like 2018, maybe early 2019. Wolf. Either way, it's been probably some time. It's probably, the murmurings of this probably have begun in early 2018, maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, when did you originally hear about it, perhaps? And like
around when it was coming out, and I was like, oh, cool, I can't wait for it to come out stateside. And then Netflix announced it was going to be, publishing the English translations, and it's like, okay, cool, we'll sit down and watch it. And then I didn't for a long time.
And you're a big Watanabe fan.
Yeah, I mean, like, Bebop's probably my favorite anime of all time. Champloo is like close behind.
Yeah.
And I even really enjoyed Space Dandy, and Kids on the Slope is fantastic as well. Like, he has a really good knack for piecing together like music with really good animation studios.
Yeah, no, he's a master of choreography and like the integration of the two, and definitely like a very keyed in style. What
I like is that even if his products are not exactly what I'm looking for, it's always going to be a quality product.
Yeah,
it's like a Tarantino film. It's never going to be like a mediocre movie.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but it definitely has an audience, and he's definitely like an auteur. Yeah. In the anime field. Like,
he just gets shit done.
Yeah, he's a very focused aesthetic that he kind of portrays within most of his works. Yeah. And obviously, we mentioned before musicality being a huge element, and this is at the forefront of Carole and Tuesday.
It's part of the plot.
It's straight up,
not just references and background music. It's legitimately the plot of the movie.
I'm pretty sure every episode is named after a famous musical hit.
Yeah, but that's the same with Bebop. Every episode of Bebop's named after a jazz piece.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I don't know if that's the same for Champloo. Champloo might be named after pieces as well.
We'll have to look into that.
It's a pretty common technique with Watanabe's style. Although this time it's broadcast like center stage, because like cut to the disc.
Literally straight
the
to
LPs,
the straight to the fucking records.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. But yeah, my first impression, I remember seeing the trailer. I went straight to you. We talked about, this should be pretty interesting. I mean, it has the trailer plays with the titular song, "Loneliest Girl," and it's a beautiful emotional track. And then like the first few episodes really kind of, not only do you hear them play that song, which is the first song I think they write together and play on the bridge, and then like using their kind of like their guerrilla, performance at that first spot in the theater on Mars. And it starts out so magical.
Absolutely. I mean, you get these amazing establishing shots of the city that they live on, which is called Alba City.
Alba,
on Mars. It's kind of like a New York style, where it's
LA,
closer to San Diego or San Francisco, because they have the huge bridge that connects the two sides.
Yeah, and there's like a bay. Yeah.
So you have this kind of neon style city in space, and and so that's charming to me. I don't know if that's your aesthetic as well.
I thought it was beautiful. Yeah. No, it was a very interesting portrayal of like a kind of potential future where there's like it's like it's paradise. This Alba City is like like you said, like sort of like Diego, New York, LA fusion city in the future that's like perfect and beautiful. Like Carole and Tuesday, they live in like the slummiest part of town, and
Carole does, because she's the orphan, but but Tuesday resides with her, so
and it's not even that bad. Like, I mean,
no, it is kind of one of those like West Side Story-esque, where it's like everything's dirty, but like that's the way they like it, sort of style.
Kind of, yeah.
I shouldn't say that. It's really the romantic idea of the ghetto side of the city.
Yeah, what I mean, the Joker version of the Bronx.
I think it's much cleaner than that. And we're not going to get into that movie. I hate that movie.
Perhaps another time. But yeah, no, it's a very controlled, concise intro to the story where you get to meet the characters, get to really see the personality dynamic between Carole and Tuesday, see what they both are kind of looking for in life. What brought them to music and what's bringing them together, and the commonalities, and how they become beautiful, like really good friends. And the first few performances are very nice, and I guess we'll just kind of go ahead and say right now, the musicality in the show, there's a lot of original songs. There's a complete soundtrack for this show,
all of which are kind of derivative tracks based on either I wanted to say Janis Joplin, but that's actually a little bit, but you get stuff like funk, David Bowie, modern Rihanna / Ariana Grande style pop. It really goes the full range. So if you're a big fan of music, I would just recommend the show on that premise.
On that premise alone, you could absolutely get a full experience out of Carole and Tuesday, because this is absolutely a celebration of music. Definitely in the West, for sure, because like there's a lot of allusions to literal stars. Like there's episodes that are focused on like basically mirror images of certain celebrities, like Whitney Houston, which is a character kind of like that, kind of mirrors the story of Flora, and then there's the David Bowie-esque character of Desmond, and et cetera, and there's a lot of and they do reference actual movie, musical stars. Like they talk about the Beatles, and they talk about the history of music, and obviously Crystal is basically Beyonce for all intents and purposes. Mars is Beyonce, and I guess Skip, the R&B singer.
He's funk. Yeah, he's like a funk R&B.
He's
I miss that, because that doesn't exist in our world anymore.
Not in the popular sense, at least, anymore.
But that was one of my favorite tracks.
There's a lot of playful exploration and celebration of music of all types. Even Ezekiel with his rap.
That rap was great.
Yeah, he has some pretty solid raps, at the back half of the thing. But the musical quality throughout the show is probably second to none. I don't think there's any other anime that really has the musical production elements of Carole and Tuesday.
Nothing this wide and of like consistent quality.
Yeah, and we mentioned the producer Shinichiro, or the director Shinichiro Watanabe, and obviously the studio that did the anime, Bones, Full Metal Alchemist, and Eureka 7, and My Hero Academia fame, and Bones has
Didn't they do?
They've done a lot. Yeah, they have a large repertoire. So I wouldn't be surprised if whatever you're about to mention is under the belt. They did Soul Eater. I could go on, but yeah.
But this one, I wouldn't normally attribute this art style to them, though. If anything, this kind of like soft shaded art design, actually reminds me of how the direction that the Pokemon animated series has turned.
A little bit,
the last
yeah.
couple of ones.
Kind of bubbly, kind of cute, yeah.
I think what they're doing now it's a new technique with CGI. They actually use like computer generated models that are not 3D, but like the baseline is 2D, and they just stretch and move them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It allows characters to be really flexible, and it just allows for a really animated feature.
Interesting, yeah. I know they definitely intersplice 3D, as many anime do, just for budget purposes, and fidelity of movement, depending on the type of scene. Like when you're having hands play on piano, it's much easier and much more fluid to have a 3D model do it than, a 2D animator to do it alongside, accompanying music. So, but yeah, it's all wonderfully produced. Like the production value across the board, from design to sound, etc. For Carole and Tuesday is superb, for sure. Let's get into the narrative, the plot, and the characters.
Do we have to?
We have to. We have to. So the meat and potatoes of the show.
There's no meat, no potatoes.
That's the gripe that we preempted on. So Carole and Tuesday. So it's split into two parts, both 12, 13 episodes, I believe.
12 episodes.
Two 12-episode parts, and for a total of 24. And so the first part, we'll call it the first half of the season, is highly focused on their rise to fame. It culminates in them becoming famous. They start as essential nobodies, kind of developing themselves as musicians, where they want to go. They meet their friends, Gus, their manager, Rhodey, their friend who's like kind of their musical technician for all intents and purposes, and just their extra helping hand. And they meet other people in the musical industry, Erdogan, the DJ. They meet their so-and-so rival, we'll call her, Angela.
Yeah.
And that's where the plot kind of begins and establishes itself. So early on, you see sort of a dichotomy between the progression of Carole and Tuesday as they kind of develop very organically. They meet each other, they write music together, they live with each other, they perform on the bridge and live. And then you see, on the other hand, the show is constantly developing Angela, a model turned singer-songwriter, and she is being assisted by a producer named Tao. Mr. Tao, who has an extremely advanced AI he's developed that kind of designs the songs and lyrics to fit around the musician and like the senses of like the general public's, I guess, emotionality and stuff like that.
I mean, it's kind of what a lot of people suspect the current music pop industry is, where you have people who are songwriters professionally who just know what kind of lyrics work. For I don't want to say the lowest common denominator, but the widest audience with the widest range, and that works on both the critical end and the common end.
Yeah.
But at the same time losing a personal touch. I
mean, they can accuse popular music to be doing that. I think that officially Disney or Warner Brothers or one of the bigger studios in Hollywood recently announced that they are using and just starting to use an AI to... Oh,
I didn't mean to say that current pop music is made by an AI, but what I mean is that it's made by a system of people who are not the actual singers.
Oh, yeah, like ghostwriters and stuff like that.
Ghostwriters, absolutely.
I'm literally talking about like a huge Hollywood studio announcing that they are physically using...
But that's what the tail end of this is.
Yeah.
It's the consultancy problem where you have people who have no actual... personal investment in the performance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they're hired as analytics.
Yeah.
As like, what do people react to? And this and that. And it's like, but it's not the artist. That's not the artist at the end of the day.
And so there. Exactly.
So obviously I have a problem with this system, and so I was really looking forward to Carole and Tuesday taking down the man.
Yeah. And that's the structure and kind of like the show kind of portrays a sort of...
Well, they put them in parallel.
Yeah.
They put Carole and Tuesday's progress in parallel to Angela's. And while that is the through line for the show, because both sides continue to exist for both part 1 and part 2, it never like...
They never really...
It feels like it never comes into actual conflict.
Exactly. You said in parallel to each other, and that's how they exist all the way to the end. They never intersect. They never conflict. Even when they're placed against each other at the end of the first season.
Like in competition.
Yeah. There's no real opposition to one another. Like they have a sort of like... Angela has like a sort of validation complex in relation to Carole and Tuesday, but between the two of them, they're never really put in stark conflict with each other. Like, there's never a hard contrast between the two styles. They just exist, both of them, and they both succeed.
Now, I feel like this lack of conflict is kind of one of the reasons we weren't as invested in the show from the mid-season on, in terms of the conflict between the two styles. But at the same time, I think maybe it was put that way because either Watanabe, whoever's writing the show, doesn't have as much anger or frustration with the music industry, maybe as I personally do. I don't know if you do, in terms of what we were just talking about.
No, yeah, there's definitely, I mean, I think anybody really could empathize, who doesn't have monetary investment, because that's really why you get into the analytics of it, to like really push that agenda of fame and notoriety and production, and as opposed to like the artistry. Like, you know, as anyone who's ever been an artist in any form, for you know handwritten, if you're a writer, if you're a musician, if you're an illustrator, whatever it is, an animator, etc., 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 you know, you do it, there's always that spark of self-expression and, like, you know, romantic artistry, I'll call it, as opposed to like the monetary side of it. And you want to honor that because it's like kind of sort of sacred, you know, like it
is. But at the same time, saying that pop idols who have their songs written for them, who describing them as not artists because they don't have that self-expression would be unfair.
Absolutely.
And that's what I mean. Like, this story is very fair to both sides.
Exactly.
It doesn't portray Angela and Tao as like the villains.
Yeah. People who create generalized music aren't desecrating the artistry of music.
They are just on the other side of the coin.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. So I wouldn't.
But it does lead to a show that kind of lacks conflict.
Yes.
With its main ideas,
because it's not so much about homogenized music versus personal music, because at first it feels like it, but it feels like it's more about like you said, the machine, like literally the machine. Like, all music is created, and like they kind of mention this multiple times repetitively to kind of get it in your head, like all music today is made by AI. Like, you guys don't use AI, you write your own songs. Like, they're constantly throwing the human element of Carole and Tuesday's music out into the forefront of dialogue in the first half of the first half of the overall show, and it feels like you really want to root for them because there's soul and humanity behind their music, and they're trying to portray that. Over the course of the show, you see that, like, Angela's ambitions and the way she goes about it aren't exactly wrong, but you feel like there's like you said, like a lack of conflict because they're put in such contrast to each other without ever really interacting, that it kind of lacks any sort of closure. It's like
a sports anime where, you know, you have both fighters and but they're working for, you know, their own good reasons and whatnot. And I guess that works for me in like Hajime no Ippo, where like I love the actual interaction between the two.
Fuck that shit, dude. Ippo, everyone's been waiting. Ippo the brawler versus Miyata the cross counter, like they've been waiting fucking decades to get that match.
I'm just saying, in Ippo, you do have a similar situation where you have two entities who are in competition against each other, but they both, like, one is not the villain and one is not the hero.
It's true.
Just, you have your protagonist and you have the opposite end.
But at the same token, everybody wants to fucking fight.
Right. But the conflict comes from the fact that they have to fight one another.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it's like, there is a competition between Angela and Carole and Tuesday, but it's like, it's so soft, and it's like, it's not like one wins and one loses.
Yes.
And that ends the other's dream. It's like, they both do well.
Yes. And into that vein, that's how the first half of the season ends.
And I think that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, the first half of the season ends with them both winning Mars Brightest, essentially. Like, well, Angela
both of them getting contracts.
Yeah, Angela officially wins.
Yes.
But they both get a chance to debut with the record label that runs Mars Brightest, which is the American Idol equivalent show that they both end up on in the first half of the season. And then we enter the second half of the show, and things get a little bit more muddied, because a lot of new elements get introduced, and there's a lot of different... this is a stark tonal shift, in my opinion, but...
I am okay with the first half of part 2.
Okay.
Because it's a lot of... some people... I've heard one person describe it as misadventure episodes or filler episodes. I disagree. I feel like they're just like...
Character vignettes.
You meet Carole's father... and that's like a small side story.
Mm-hmm.
You spend an episode meeting the new producer that they're gonna have, and that's kind of like its own little story in its own.
Yeah.
You meet Desmond, who is like a David Bowie-esque entity, and that's a great episode. That's probably one of my favorite in the whole show.
Yeah, that's a fantastic episode. Tuesday gets an episode to kind of fall in love with the
she
reporter.
Has a little, like, romantic interest.
Yeah, I mean,
and
like,
gets her heart broken.
Yeah.
And as well, you get the episode with Flora, who is like a Whitney Houston analog for the story and has a personal relation with Gus. And that's a great episode as well. The problem is that those first 6 episodes have those, individual character moments. And laced within them all is the,
this overarching political drama plot.
Thank you.
Where there is, like, so, as we mentioned before, Tuesday's mother is a political figure. Well, apparently she's actually running for the president of Mars.
The president of Mars.
And she is actually, there's this huge drama where she's utilizing, like, a pollster who's kind of like a crooked political campaign leader who, like, orchestrates a bombing and blames it on, like, the immigrants, and is utilizing a lot of tension to kind of, like, push this agenda against immigrants from Earth that are coming to Mars.
Yes. Mars is considered like
paradise,
the promised land, more or less, and Earth has been kind of like
it's a downtrodden backwater.
Yep, pretty much. And so, for all our American listeners, which I assume everybody is,
probably a majority.
Obviously, this parallels our current political climate.
Yeah. Earth is Mexico.
Yeah, Earth is basically Mexico. It doesn't. It's also like where all the refugees are like darker skinned.
Yeah, it's Mexico. It's Syria. It's like every other like place where we would reject these specific types of immigrants, and Mars is the promised land.
Yeah, and so I actually don't mind the political commentary.
I don't mind a lot of the larger, headier ideas that Carole and Tuesday plays with. This one included. Where we both have struggled with is the execution of the ideas. Introducing such an idea, you want to dignify it with at least some sort of meaningful commentary on it, and they don't. No. Like we said at the beginning, there's no meat to a lot of the interesting ideas that Carole and Tuesday throws into its fucking like soup of an anime. It just like keeps throwing random shit in there and never really fully develops any of them.
Yeah. And it's weird because you have this underlying plot thread of like the immigration crisis, and everything around that is the centerpiece of the second act.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it just seems very underwhelming. Maybe it's because we're so desensitized as Americans to the drama and the tragedy that is the treatment of immigrants in a wealthy nation.
Yeah.
So maybe that's on us or myself. But I don't know. It's like they bring up like detention centers, right? And there's like 5 people.
Yeah. I mean, okay, well,
like it's one of these things where it feels very much like somebody who's read the headlines but doesn't actually know the situation.
I get that. I give props to Watanabe for having the sensitivity to try and portray have an anime that could be construed as a political statement towards something that's happening outside of his own political climate, something outside of Japan that's happening in the West, specifically in the United States. Yeah. At times, it does feel a little bit so broad that he might not have the full picture, or is a little bit too scared to kind of wade into those waters, while he has an actual narrative about these 2 young girls who are trying to have a musical career.
Yeah.
But because it's so heavily...
it's so heavy-handed, while at the same time, it's I don't want to say it's condescending, but it's like, it's a complicated issue.
It comes across a little childish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a little bit of a naive look at the issues at hand. And again, you and I are not really like, proposing any sort of for or against when it comes to these sort of
No, absolutely not. But like, okay, I'll do a direct example. Because Tuesday's mother, the political
the candidate
for president, is supposed to be like a Trump analog.
She's like a Trump Hilton fusion.
Yeah, kind of. She's only Clinton in design, but like in terms of her policies, she's Trump. But it's like all of her policies come from the a political consultant that is like using the AI to like construct this perfect campaign.
Yeah.
And it's like those people who keep saying like, oh, Trump, everything Trump does is for his ego, and it's like such like a simplistic view of the situation. It's like,
No.
Long story short, I'm gonna cut it off there because it's complicated, and try to incorporate this story about like a musician's rise to fame with this really complicated current political matter.
Yeah.
Is tricky.
It's tricky, and the problem is that it would be better if it was like an ancillary element, perhaps, but it is literally the driving force of the back half of the entire anime, because by the end of it, the main conflict leads all of the characters into this sort of very shorthanded crisis where musicians are starting to get arrested. Ezekiel, the rapper, gets arrested for basically creating a rap piece about, criticizing the government, and then he promptly gets arrested.
And that was great.
And then Skip, who has essentially, as I understand it, committed no crime, but created a critiquing piece about immigration again. Another artist of color creating a musical piece critiquing the immigration policies, also gets arrested. And then suddenly, after those two, Carole and Tuesday awaken to the fact that, hey, this might create a future where music isn't free. And so we have to save music. And so we have to band together, and then that culminates in what is in every prologue of every episode, right before the opening, this 7-minute miracle that is constantly being alluded to. The 7-minute miracle is that they are able to basically gather up a majority of the musicians on Mars and have them sing together a 7-minute song, sort of in protest and in unison about togetherness and love and, all the kumbaya shit. So, for lack of a better term. And yeah, that's your ending right there. It's a beautiful moment in its own right, but there's a lot left on the table, to say the least.
You know what? If you focus the message, I'm not saying to change the anime. I'm saying if, in my mind, I focus more on the message being how music needs to remain free and how we can't silence like individual words, despite maybe our political differences and our frustrations and own needs. If we focus on that aspect of the anime, it might come off as less cheesy and less naive.
Perhaps, yeah.
Because then it's not talking about actually immigration policy. It's using immigration issues to actually talk about a wider message of like freedom of speech and stuff like of expression and stuff like that.
That's fair.
Which is
what's interesting,
a different thing.
What's interesting about that? Complete tangential.
Yeah.
In parallel to this,
Okay.
not to derail too much, but in the show, Ertegun, while presenting the Mars Grammy, for Best New Artist, talks about the bravery of the Grammys for still honoring Angela, who's represented by Tao, her producer, who's being arrested because he refuses to basically create or let the AI he developed be utilized by Tuesday's parents, or Tuesday's mother, for political gain. In the same vein, IRL, for most of you know, P. Diddy, or just Diddy, he recently came out with a statement at the Grammys, which happened this past weekend, this current Grammys, about how short-sighted the Grammys are and how they've disrespected black artists for, decades, and et cetera, et cetera.
Really?
I just thought it was an interesting perpendicular view where you have like one that kind of shows the bravery. Because in Carole and Tuesday's world, music and musicians and the Grammys and the organizations therefore are all kind of unified in a sort of fair and just system, so to speak. And it looks like in their world, there's a lot of representation for
oh yeah, this is a really diverse cast.
Yeah. And as opposed to like,
at least I assume so.
IRL, where like the system is very much integrated with who the Grammys are, and and the unfairness that's come with that. I'm not really trying to say anything about the subject at hand, but I thought it was an interesting parallel between the two.
I think to simplify things in the anime, in Carole and Tuesday's world, the music industry is more or less separated from the political industry.
Yeah, they're all about just the musicians.
And the threat is that the political industry is starting to encroach and invade on the musical industry.
When Tao is asked to use his AI for political gain, basically the AI he developed for music, because Tao's character is lacking emotion, he develops it to try and understand emotion, that he's converted that into a music making AI essentially, and he doesn't want it to be used for political gain, which is why he's targeted and has to basically become like goes underground. Yeah, that's like the symbolism of that, I suppose, like that where the musical industry in their world is separate and sort of pure in a sense because of it.
Yeah. So, and that's fine. I'm able to swallow that pill.
I'm able to at least reconcile it, you know?
Yeah, because it just, I don't know, because Carole and Tuesday's music kind of are accepted within the community.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps that aspect. But yeah,
their music is
trying to say that this is what the current that Carole and Tuesday's version of the music industry is anything like our music industry would be the most naive thing in the world.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. For sure.
It's just sad that they pull so many analogs from it that it's hard not to compare the two.
Yeah. They would like it to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd all like it to be where it's like
this is the idealistic music industry.
An institution that represents and is for the musicians and it's for every musician and for the betterment of humankind almost. Where it kind of saves it supposedly because within that song it helps unify people in a time where there's a lot of division.
Yeah, and in that case, it's a beautiful message.
It's because something is simple and cliche, and for lack of a better term, basic. It doesn't mean that it's bad. You know, like saying like you go up into like a basic bitch's house and you see fucking Live Laugh Love on the wall, decorated with Christmas lights and a fucking picture of Audrey Hepburn in the fucking parrot and like the Eiffel Tower, and like those things are stupid, like are like basic, Follow me on this.
I'm trying.
Those things are cliche, but like those things still mean something. Like Live Laugh Love is still great advice for any fucking it's still great advice for anybody. Paris is romantic. Audrey Hepburn is an icon. Like those things are stupid basic, you know what I'm saying? But like they still have value,
You're right.
And the message that they give here is one that's incredibly cheesy, for lack of a better term as well. And like you've heard it 1,000 times, probably 1,000 different ways, where like unity and like togetherness and love are like the most important things that we can communicate, especially through music, which is so affecting. But it's like it's still meaningful. But do I think that the overall story could have been executed in a way that kind of portrayed that in a more thoughtful, interesting way? Absolutely. But still it's still a very entertaining and pleasant experience nonetheless.
I think I personally might just not give enough respect to the power of like music in terms of how it can change people's minds and people's opinions and stuff like that, despite having a lot of experience with music. And that's maybe why the tail end of the show does not resonate with me personally.
Yeah.
And I find it to be cheesy and naive and cliche.
It is all those things.
Well, naive, maybe not.
To a degree.
Right. How much you say that may be naive might depend on your opinion in terms of the whole circumstance. But personally, I'm a person who deals much better in terms of like the commodities. I understand how gangs fighting can represent like a culture in a time.
Yeah.
Or how conflict can represent culture. I get a little flustered when it's like, no, this one industry is what can help change the tide of culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very self-congratulatory.
Yeah.
And it's like if you made a show about an animator, and then all the animators got together and designed a show so beautiful and so perfect that Japan's birth rate suddenly went up. It's like taking a real world problem and like putting a Band-Aid on it with art.
Yeah.
And it just...
And it's not like those things don't have that ability, but it is rarely the case, honestly, that it is like the cure-all.
In my opinion, and I think your opinion as well.
Yeah.
So, if we're wrong about that, feel free to write down in the comments
how music can save the world.
And how cynical pricks we are.
Yeah.
But while you're doing that, hit subscribe.
Yes, please. And the like button.
We're going to try to pump these out a bit more consistently.
Please. Anyway.
I think that's a good place to cut off.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, again, just to end on a positive note, truly. The show is still extremely enjoyable. A lot of Carole and Tuesday, I think, is the reason why we have gripes with the show, at least for me in particular, is there is a lot of untapped potential. There's a lot that is left. I'm left wanting the show to achieve more, and that's a mixture of expectation, because again, the acclaim of the studios involved, the talent involved, and also the ideas that are played with. But at the same time, there's still extremely memorable moments, even in that back half that we just kind of trashed. Like the moments with Flora, all the character vignettes you mentioned, very fun. Like seeing Carole and Tuesday go back to Cydonia after being like trashed out of it the first time is still a very fun and kind of a nice moment to have for the characters. There's a lot of still really good character progression and writing in the back half of the show. It's just that it feels like it could have achieved more, and it feels like the conclusion that they reached is perhaps a little bit cliche for my taste, and perhaps for your taste as well, Chris. But it doesn't mean that it's something that won't resonate with you, the listener. Won't resonate with many people. And again, if there's anything that you can derive from this that we haven't, please write it down below, and we would love to have a discussion with y'all at some point in time. But yeah, did you have any other thoughts?
I think that's it for me. I do want to emphasize that this is a really good show. If you haven't seen it yet, we didn't really spoil too much.
No.
There's a lot of plot development that happens that we haven't even mentioned. So give it a chance. I would watch it all the way through, or at the very least, listen to the OST.
Yeah.
And this is a recommendation just with like critiques.
Yeah, for sure. At its worst, it's a 7 out of 10. You know what I'm saying? Like this show.
Oh, I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
Exactly. Yeah. At its worst, it's still very serviceable, very fun watch, especially for anime on Netflix. It's definitely a must watch.
Although, and this is like the pettiest of critiques.
Go for it.
There are moments, many moments during the performance pieces,
reaction shots,
where you're having these beautiful moments of watching the performers move and sing with the song, cut to still reaction shots, like no animation at all of people in the crowd, and it's like, I don't know, it really takes it out. It takes me out of it.
It's funny. It's glad you mentioned that, because we giggled quite a bit at watching those, because you got like this, exactly how I described, this beautifully fluid animation for an extremely well-produced musical track for these performances, and you got Piotr loving all night, and like he's dancing with like straight, really hot fucking like b-boy moves, and then you cut to like wooden still shots of the crowd, just like just there
with mouths open,
mouths agape, like, and no animation to them, and constantly.
It's almost like comical, because it's like in a comedy movie you would have like horribly embarrassing thing happen, hard cut to still like non-reactionary shot. So I just that's the only like animation style critique that I have of the show.
For sure, yeah.
And that woman who was wearing sunglasses inside. Yeah. What the absolute crap is that?
He was really beat up about one of the patrons of the Grammys wearing sunglasses inside.
Who does that? Who does that?
The cool kids, bro.
If you do that, you can unsubscribe right now.
Damn, no, please don't. But, yeah.
I'm sure Eye Patch Wolf does that.
Oh, my God. Eye Patch Wolf. You're a cool guy. Anyway... Chris is Irish too. I think he's Irish. I don't know, but I digress. Just throw us a recommendation. Yeah. Anyway, that's all we've got for today. I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation. If you have anything in mind regarding Carole and Tuesday, any thoughts that we didn't touch upon, any characters that you loved or hated, please shout them out below in the comment section. Like, comment, subscribe if you had a good time. As always, have a good day, have a good life. We will see you all next time.